If you love homemade soup as much as I do, you know that it's a nutritious and delicious choice, but it's not always the most practical choice when you're short on time. However, if you are worried about buying store-bought canned soups because you think they have too many carbs, I want you to think again. Today, I am revealing the best brands of low-carb soup right in your stores that you can buy today and keep your blood sugar balanced. So stay tuned. I'm Erin here with Healthy Mom, Happy Family, and as a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator, I get asked about canned soups all of the time. So many people want to know if they are helpful or harmful when it comes to managing type 2 diabetes. So today in this video, I am sharing with you exactly what to look for when choosing canned soups, and I'm going to be giving you my top choices for the best low-carb canned soup brands for people that live with diabetes. So if you love soup, you're gonna love these recommendations. But before we dive in, I just wanna remind you that if you are living with diabetes or insulin resistance and are looking for tips and tricks and easy recipes, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. All right, so let's get started. So first, let's talk about why you should have soup in general. So what I love about soup, it is a very comforting food, especially when the weather is cold. We want to warm up with a bowl of soup, but it's not just about the comfort and the warmth. Soup can be an amazing way to get more nutrients into your diet. Soup is such a great way, especially to get more vegetables into our diet, which most of us are lacking, and it can be a really easy way to bump up protein as well as fiber. But not all soups are created equal. When you look at broth-based soups, these many times have more vegetables and lean proteins. They have less fat, less calories. You can get a variety of vitamins and minerals and even stay hydrated from choosing more broth-based soups. Now, creamy soups, on the other hand, you have to be a little bit more careful. Doesn't mean you can't have creamy soups, but remember with creamy soups, they tend to be higher in fat and higher in calories, specifically saturated fat, which in large amounts can drive cholesterol levels up and also impact insulin resistance. So choose carefully. Now, what I really love about soup are the benefits. So on top of helping you to get more nutrition and more fiber, more vegetables, soups can help you to feel fuller longer. This is because they have a lot of volume. The warm fluid also helps you to feel more full. And then on top of that, you're eating them more slowly, you're being more mindful. So all of these things about soup can make it a really great tool when it comes to weight management. Now let's be realistic. Not everybody has time to make and prepare homemade soup. So that's where canned soup comes in. Now, when you're choosing canned soup, there are certain things I want you to look for. When you are choosing a can of soup, make sure to look at the nutrition facts label. This is where you're going to really determine if this soup is the best choice for you. We're going to look at everything from calories to fat content to carbohydrates and even sodium. So first, let's talk about the carbohydrates on the nutrition facts label for soup. So the carbohydrate count, my recommendation when we're thinking about soups that are going to be best for blood sugar and lower carb canned soups, we want to look for those that have 15 grams of carbohydrate or less per serving. Now, for most of us, when we're opening up a can of soup, the serving size is going to be the entire can. Now, what you will find on the nutrition facts label is many times the serving size is listed as 1 cup and there's multiple servings in the can. So just remember that what is on the nutrition facts panel is based on 1 serving. And if you're going to eat multiple servings, you have to multiply everything on that label. So if there's 10 grams of carbohydrate per serving, but you're going to eat 3 servings in the can, you're actually getting 30 grams of carbohydrate. So we have to look at that. Now remember, under carbohydrate is where they list fiber. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate, but it does not have an impact on blood sugar. We can subtract out the fiber from the total carbs to get what's known as the net carbs, or the carbs that effectively impact your blood sugar. So if a can of soup has 15 grams of total carbohydrate and 5 grams of fiber, it's really only 10 grams of net carbs. And that is where you're going to see only 10 grams of carb that are impacting your blood sugar. So when it comes to looking for low-carb canned soup brands, keep in mind those net carbs over just the total carbohydrates. Now, another area of the food label that I want you to look at is the total fat. But underneath total fat, I want you to pay strict attention to saturated fat. Saturated fat you're going to see in higher amounts in cream-based soups. This is the type of fat that comes from animal fats. It's an inflammatory fat. It can drive up our cholesterol levels. Now, it doesn't mean you have to consume 0 grams of saturated fat per day, but it should be less than 10% of your total daily calories. Having too much saturated fat each day can drive up your cholesterol levels, can increase inflammation, and over time it can make you more insulin resistant, which makes it harder to manage your blood sugar. Now, the American Heart Association recommends that saturated fat is even a little bit lower, especially if you have type 2 diabetes. So they recommend you keep saturated fat to no more than 5 to 6% of your total calories. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, that would be only 13 grams of saturated fat per day. So use that as your gauge when you're choosing canned soups. If there is saturated fat, lower is better, and keep in mind the rest of the saturated fat you're consuming throughout the day. You want to keep that to less than 10% of your total calories, or depending on which guidelines you're following, even as low as 5% of your total daily calories. All right, now let's talk about the big elephant in the room, which is sodium when it comes to canned soups. So many people are fearful of canned soups because of sodium. And salt is really added to canned soups because it's a preservative, but it also has a really important role when it comes to the flavor of soup. You're not going to find a soup that has no sodium in a canned form, but we can keep an eye on the amount of sodium. High levels of sodium throughout the day can impact blood pressure. So if we have too much sodium, this can cause a strain on our cardiovascular system. And that's why we want to monitor our sodium throughout the day. But the key word here is sodium per day. So if you have a can of soup and it has a higher amount of sodium than otherwise you would have in a normal meal, but you keep your sodium low the rest of the day, it can still fit in with a lower sodium meal plan. Now, when you're choosing canned soups, look for no salt added, look for lower sodium varieties when possible, and keep in mind that what you want for sodium per day is 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day or less. So if your can of soup provides 700 or 800 milligrams of sodium, that is high for one meal, but if we're keeping sodium low the rest of the day and eating less processed foods the rest of the day, chances are you can still stay within that guideline. Okay, so now let's dive into what I know you're really here for, the best low-carb canned soup brands. Now, I know when you go into the soup aisle in the grocery store, it can be overwhelming. There are so many options out there. So what I did is I broke it down for you. I went through and I chose my favorite low-carb soup brands. They're delicious, they're nutritious, they are generally lower in saturated fat, lower in carb, and low to moderate in sodium. So you can look at all of these, look at the nutrition facts on each of these brands, make sure it's right for you, make sure you like the taste of it. But these 11 best low-carb canned soups are some of my favorite picks, and I hope you love them too. So our first is Campbell's Chunky Healthy Request Chicken Noodle Soup. I love chicken noodle soup, and this is really a healthier take on chicken noodle soup. It only has 13 grams of carbs per serving, and it has 7 grams of protein as well as 3 grams of fat. So it really has that perfect balance where we're looking for protein, fat, and fiber along with our carbohydrates for better blood sugar. Now, the other thing about this soup is it has 410 milligrams of sodium per serving. So it's still fitting within those heart healthy guidelines, and it is a lower sodium option when you think about traditional chicken noodle soups. Next up is Bar Harbor Foods New England Clam Chowder, and this is the condensed variety. Now, New England Clam Chowder is more of a cream-based soup, and so a lot of times you might be worried about cream-based soups and are they low carb and are they too high in calories? This is a low carb option. You're getting only 11 grams of carbohydrate per serving. There's also 3 grams of protein and only 2.5 grams of fat per serving with 400 milligrams of sodium. So even though this is a creamier soup, it is lower in fat and it still falls within those guidelines that we're looking at not just being low carb, but also heart healthy as well. Next, we have Progresso Reduced Sodium Italian Style Wedding Soup with Meatballs. So if you are somebody that likes a little bit more of a hearty soup, you love a little bit more beef or meat in your soup, this one is for you. Now, it has 480 milligrams of sodium per serving, which is lower than your traditional Italian wedding soups. And this is a lower carb option, which I love. So per serving, you're only getting 2 grams of fat, 11 grams of carb, and 4 grams of protein. So a really nice balance. It is slightly higher in carbs than maybe some of the other options here on the list. And if you're following a keto meal plan, you want to consider that. But this still works very well when we think about blood sugar balance with the soup. And it is significantly lower in carbs than the traditional wedding soups that you would see. Now let's look at Health Valley Organic Vegetable Soup, no salt added. So remember when I said there's soups out there that label themselves as no salt added or low in sodium? You still want to read the labels, look at how many milligrams of sodium are actually in those soups, but that no salt added is a key to show you that it's probably lower in sodium than other varieties. This variety I love because you're getting a good amount of vegetables in the soup. You're getting only 2 grams of fat per serving, 15 grams of carb, and 2 grams of protein. Now, when you think about the sodium, if you are on a low sodium diet or you're trying to cut your sodium, this soup only has 45 milligrams of sodium per serving. That's lower than what you would find in a slice of bread. So a very low sodium option, especially if you're concerned about sodium or are trying to reduce it for blood pressure. So now let's look at Amy's Organic Low Fat Chunky Vegetable Soup, reduced sodium. So this is another reduced sodium option, really packed full of vegetables. So a great way to get more fiber, more vegetables onto your plate. In 1 cup, you're only getting 1.5 grams of fat, 11 grams of carb, 3 grams of protein. Now, it is a reduced sodium soup, but you are still getting 530 milligrams of sodium. So this is higher on the scale of sodium, but it is much lower than the traditional or the original version of the soup. So it's improved, but you still want to watch your sodium throughout the day. Now let's look at Progresso's Light Zesty Santa Fe style chicken. Now, if you love flavor, you love spice, you love a little zest to your soup, this is a really great option. Per serving, you're only getting 1 gram of fat, 11 grams of carb, and 4 grams of protein. Now, per serving, you're also getting 400 milligrams of sodium. So you can see it has a really nice balance for blood sugar. It's moderate with sodium, a lot of flavor, great way to get more vegetables to your plate. Now, Progresso also has the Light Zesty Southwestern Style Vegetable Soup, and this is another really great option if you want to boost more vegetables, and also if you're looking for a meat-free option. Because it doesn't have any meat in it, it only has 1 gram of fat. Protein's a little lower with 3 grams of protein, but also 12 grams of carb and 470 milligrams of sodium. So moderate when we look at this. A bowl of this on the side with maybe a little bit of an extra protein on the side would be a great way to make this even more filling and more blood sugar balanced. Now, Campbell's makes a lightly salted vegetable noodle soup. So this is great if you want flavor but want to cut back on sodium slightly. It's low carb. It's a great way to get more vegetables. You have zucchini and corn and kale all in this soup. Only 1.5 grams of fat, 15 grams of carbohydrate, and you're getting about 290 milligrams of sodium. So you can see that this is a lower sodium variety than many of the other soups we've talked about. Now, if you like a bit more of a creamy, cheesier soup, check out Progresso's Light Broccoli Cheese Soup. This is a really great savory option. It's very much like a comfort food. The great thing about this is even though it's a cheese soup, you're only getting 6 grams of fat per serving, 2.5 grams of saturated fat, so well within our guidelines for heart health, 11 grams of carbohydrate, 5 grams of protein. Now, the only downside to this soup is the sodium. It has 790 milligrams of sodium. So you would have to be strategic if you're having this soup that you are watching your sodium intake the rest of the day. That's really the only downside here. Next up, we have Progresso Traditional Chicken and Orzo with Lemon. This is a really light and refreshing soup. I know a lot of times we think about soup more in the winter months, but this is a soup you could really have all year round. Very low in fat. You're only getting 0.5 gram of fat per serving, 15 grams of carbohydrate, 7 grams of protein. So a little bit higher on the protein scale than some other soups, which is great. Sodium's similar to the cheese soup we just looked at. The sodium's higher here, 700 milligrams of sodium. So you do want to watch your sodium throughout the rest of the day to balance this in, but otherwise it makes a really great low carb soup variety. And then last on our list, but certainly not least, we have Progresso Rich and Hearty Steak and Vegetable Soup. So if you are somebody that really wants a hearty soup, you want your meat and your vegetable and kind of like a stew, this is a really great option. It has that chunky vegetable and beef combination. You're only getting 1.5 grams of fat, which is really low, especially considering that it has beef in the soup. 16 grams of carbohydrate, so it is the higher end of the carbohydrate here, but only 14 grams of net carb and 5 grams of protein. Sodium's a little bit higher with this soup, 670 milligrams. So keep a balance with that between the saturated fat, between the sodium. This may not be a soup you want to have multiple times a day or every day, but it's a great option for a lower carb soup that you can enjoy and really gives you all the flavors that you're looking for. All right, so let's talk about the bottom line. Can you have canned soup and still keep your blood sugar in check? Absolutely. There are a large amount of canned soups that are low in carbs and can balance blood sugar and are perfectly safe to have if you have diabetes. What I want you to remember is that not all canned soups are created equal. You have to do the research. Look at the back of the can, look at the nutrition facts, and see if it works with your meal plan goals. Focus on the total carbohydrate as well as fiber. Look at the saturated fat, look at the sodium. Those are the big areas that you want to focus on when choosing a canned soup variety. And remember, when you're looking for low carb canned soups, the brands that you want to look for are going to have a lower carbohydrate profile, but also more fiber, because that's going to give you a lower net carb, which means it has less impact on your blood sugar. So this is my list of the best low carb canned soups. I will have in the description below a link where you can go and print this out so you can take it with you to the grocery store next time you're craving soup. And remember, this is not a completely exhausted list. There are other brands out there. So I would love to hear from you in the comments to know what is your favorite brand of low carb canned soup. Let me know so I can check it out. And if you liked today's video, I would love for you to give this a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for being here.